Hey, look, it's time to bring it in. It's our quarantine True Hoop from Home show. How's everybody doing?
We're good.
It's David Thorpe. And look, Brandon Grier's back. How are you, sir?
I'm happy to be back. Thanks for having me again.
No, it's great to have you. So since you were last here, a lot has happened, including now we have a pretty good sense of the NBA's reopening plan. How are we doing?
I think, it's interesting times. I mean, 2020 keeps throwing more and more things at us. So, you have the NBA pushing further along with their reopening and restarting. What's going on in America today with the protests and George Floyd. Then you have, Kyrie and Dwight leading a push amongst players. So it's a lot going on.
You have clients all over the globe, so you've seen a few different reopening plans. How does the NBA's compare?
I think, of course, the NBA has way more resources. So them bringing 22 teams and 35 people in each traveling party, it's so many more layers and it's much more complicated. I think, going off of what all they have accomplished as an agent, I think, they're doing a pretty good job. Of course, there are holes in any plan of this magnitude, but when you look at the Israeli league, who players back and then they wanted them quarantined, and one of my guys was with the team where they put him in a resort. It was just those players who were coming in from outside countries in this resort, and they're training in a court, and after a while it's just you just see each other every day. So they were asking, well, if we're doing this, can we just go back to our apartments and do it? And eventually
no, you have to be in a resort setting.
Yeah, so they allow them to do that. And then you have like self-reporting from other teams, similar to what the NBA is talking about with the hotline to report people breaking the rules. They say, other competitive teams are sending spies to see if they're out. So I think Amari Stoudemire got caught outside of his place. So it's a lot going on.
But you feel safe sending your players to play basketball now?
I think that once our government decided that we're just going to open up the country and whoever gets it, it's hard to ask these businesses and players to just continue being more diligent than, the United States government, who kind of is supposed to lead the direction we go in as a country. So I don't think that my players are sitting home, not taking any risk, leaving the house, doing different things like that at this point in the quarantine. So I understand the risk and I'm okay with them going back to work, knowing the, precautions the league has taken. It's not perfect, but at some point.
Are they asking you lots of questions, Brandon, or do they feel pretty informed from their teams?
The biggest thing I saw was a lot of guys had checked out in terms of this season was over and they weren't going to play again till next year. And, guys may give you different reasons, but I think that that's a big thing in them getting over that mentally, more so than the players having the fear of Corona or COVID.
It's funny. It doesn't seem like players are that scared. I mean, you would be exhibit A as to why they should be scared, since you had a bad case of it. But are they just not that worried? Pardon me.
Yeah, I think very early on when it first started, you heard players really saying it wasn't worth the risk. And now that we're months into this thing, I don't run into too many players or hear from players who their health and safety is their number one concern.
Is it just being young, I guess? Is that young people?
You got to realize athletes are guys who have beat the 1 in a million odds their whole life. So they always think that they're going to beat the odds. They're the exception. Yeah. They have this invincibility.
I talked to a player about this yesterday. They're so used to dealing with risk. It's a different kind of risk. but they play hurt, right? They play injured. We'd rather them play hurt, not injured, of course. It's just kind of commonplace for them. It's up to me, the real adults in the room that have spent all their days focused on this and not on basketball, to explain to them this is different than having a sore elbow, right? Or knee pain. This is just a different kind of risk that as adults they can make that decision, but they need to be informed of it.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes that's our job as agents or representatives to protect themselves from their belief that they can, beat everything. That's they're some of the elite competitors in the world.
Well, this is a new thing. It's so weird, right? Where the big risky thing is like a hug, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
If you're going to be really safe and have like a bubble, like safety thing, you need to eliminate hugs, which means every single person when they go golfing that day or jogging and knocks into someone they know has to remember not to hug. And like, that seems like a sort of yin and yang thing with the athlete who thinks they can not get hurt by anything, right? Like, hugs are going to happen. Like, they are.
And as the days go on of them being in the bubble, like, I think it's human nature for you to relax more and more and think you're safe and the risk is gone. So it's going to be interesting to see. And that's where I think the holes in their plan really come into play, because if you have the Disney workers who are coming and going and different outside threats, like, that's what's going to get the players and risk some big time player being out during a critical time. Because, I mean, we know some players are going to get it. I'm sure there are going to be some false tests, positive tests as well, where guys are going to have to sit out.
I read in the proposal, Henry, I think I read this, that they're going to be able to like rent out a restaurant in the area. There's so many of those things. This is the reason why they're Disney, among other reasons, is because there are so many options that they can kind of control to a degree. And that's going to help them, I think, get out if indeed they can really protect the restaurant. That'll make them, I think, feel a little more comfortable anyway. But I mean, Brandon is right. These guys, did you see the 4 I think there were teenage girls that were in Jacksonville. They all decided to go out. There were 16 total girls. All 16 got COVID. 4 of them were on CNN last night. None of them had, and this is to the point you guys were discussing about young athletes. These were just I think they were high school girls, maybe seniors. None of them had anything really bad at all, but I thought they were mature last night, the 4 on CNN anyway, talking about, we were wrong. We should have just not done this. All 16 of us took a risk we should not have taken. But the fact that all of them got it, pretty freaky, scary, but also encouraging that barely any symptoms at all. We can't learn anything definitively from that, but I think athletes are feeling like, what they're reading about, and that it's mostly older people and or obese or whatever. Obviously, that doesn't apply to them. It'll be interesting once they're in there as things develop. The first time a guy gets sick, how they're going to react. Like, I'm going to watch the games today in Spain, Brandon. Barcelona's playing right now, and I want to see, Henry, are they hugging a big shot? How are they reacting after a made shot? And how are they defending? How Henry and I talked about this yesterday. I will write about it for Friday. How the games look different. I haven't watched the German games yet. The Spanish league's a great league, second best league to ours. So it'll be interesting to see how they react to all that.
People cough, right?
Yeah, right.
In life.
People cough. That might be a great play when a guy's shooting a 3.
Yeah. I mean, you get some of the worst stares and side eyes, any coughing, sneezing, period, nowadays, no matter where you're at. So I'm sure that'll happen. But I think that once the ball goes up and guys are playing, like, there's going to be no difference in how they approach the game. I've seen guys come back and play after being out, for the last 2-3 months. And I think the quality of play will take a long time to ramp up to the level that we're used to, just because, at what point in guys' lives have they gone 3 months without playing competitive basketball in terms of
Right.
everybody on the court. You know,
Right.
like
All of
usually
them. Right.
you're integrating one or two players coming off an injury or something like that. But I mean, you're literally going to get all these teams who had gone months without playing basketball at a high level.
So if there's going to be a work stoppage of any kind, it's not going to be because of coronavirus first, though. It's going to be because of the Black Lives Matter protests and this moment. We're in this unusual moment in American history where we're grappling with 400 years of racism, and NBA players have a hunger for change. What is that right ask? Like, you're a negotiator, you're an agent. Like, what's the change? What do we want here?
I'm torn on, you know, understanding the plight, understanding that we want to ask for something, and the players, you know, unity in that. I believe that them playing is a great thing because of the economic impact on Black families. You know, I saw Garrett Temple talk about building generational wealth and using economics as a tool. So to me, when I see a lot of these companies, you know, just wanting to not be on the wrong side and to signal that they're with us, it doesn't mean as much to me. To me, if you're talking about something, the real change is in terms of economics. So hiring people on executive boards, hiring people in positions to hire other Black people. Because oftentimes the people doing the hiring, you know, human nature, you hire who you're comfortable with. I think that, you know, if we're going to ask for something, it's things like that ultimately change our economic position as a whole, which in turn, you know, lifts all the boats.
That's a super important point, Brandon. And I think it's missed when I think they maybe even asked as part of this discussion yesterday. I thought I read that they wanted more interviews with people in positions of executive power. But what you just said, Brandon, which is you hire people you're comfortable with, that by definition suggests that they should also be making sure they populate their entire staffs in a much more diverse way. Because and Henry and I have friends, I'm sure you do too, Brandon, that are executives in the league now that started off not quote unquote in the mailroom, but you know, in PR or whatever, or low on the totem pole of, you know, video coach. But they're around and you get to know them. And over the years, you get a feel for them and they can bubble up through that organization. Or if someone they got to know pretty well at a higher up changed jobs, brought them with them for a little more of a promotion. It needs to be a diverse, the vertical, not just the vertical of GM only, but all the way down that vertical and then horizontally across the spectrum of these NBA teams to populate with a much more diverse and a lot more, honestly, there's a lot more Black men and women in all those positions, and then allow for the possibility to build up, in addition to trying to inspire them and teach them the skills to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at these professional leagues and they have to have a Rooney rule in a league that's majority Black, or the NBA is struggling to have GMs and presidents in positions, you know, it's a microcosm for society. Like, these are industries that are dominated by Black faces, but yet there aren't enough qualified people to be in leadership positions and run teams and, you know, call the shots on who we draft and employ with our team. I think that, you know, really we realize how far behind we still are looking at things like that just in our professional sports leagues, let alone everyday life and, you know, Fortune 500 companies.
I'm a little, so like, this is 30 small businesses basically, right? And obviously it would be wonderful to reform within, but it's still 30 small businesses but it's also a pretty good chunk of America's focus, right, on this issue, right? So to me, like, it feels like it's time to be greedy, right? It feels like it's time to ask for way more than internal reform, right? I don't like, you know, I think if if the players of the NBA all wanted a specific bill passed right now, it would probably pass, right? At least a house,
Yeah, at
et
least the
cetera, et
house.
cetera. But I feel like like it um
You're
I
saying
don't know.
think bigger. Don't just think NBA. It's a great
I mean,
point.
it's just not gonna the problems that we're seeing on cell phone camera footage are not gonna be solved by the GM of
Yeah.
any team being a different character, right? Like, whereas I do think the collective players and characters in the NBA have enough influence to make huge influence. It's just it's a lot of stuff that we're all terrible at, right?
Who
Like
could be
we're
a leader
terrible
of
at it.
that?
What's the
Henry's point
policy
is so
reform that
good.
will make America great again? Like, I don't know.
But Henry, your point's great. But Brandon, who could be a leader? Maybe it's a player, maybe it's a coach, to galvanize on that exact issue, Henry. Asking for dollars and not pennies, to quote Ray Charles, right?
Yeah.
Ask for, including police reform and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, stars have the
Yeah.
the juice and the leverage to get things done.
I'm gonna steal a line. 2 words. LeBron.
Yes. I mean, we all know it's tough to put everything on one man who, to me, has been the greatest athlete of all times in terms of empowering and crossing the lines of not just being a star, but also having an impact in his community, in social justice issues. So once again, everybody's going to look at him.
All right, here's my left field idea. A friend of mine is an Africa expert, and he lived in Africa during the Civil War in Sierra Leone, and a photojournalist, and now he's a professor in University of Washington. But he came and stayed in this house when he was getting all his visas together and everything to go to testify in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Sierra Leone. And I remember being like, why are you doing, like, why does this exist? Like, what is, like, they don't punish anybody, they don't write anybody checks, like, but they testify.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me, so now I'm like, okay, the NBA has a tricky history with race, right? Donald Sterling is the one example that has been like hauled into the spotlight. He was on audio tape, which prompted it all. But part of me is like, among the other bigger, more important asks, like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission of like, how have we done? Like, I mean, and I've been talking about the DeVos family a lot, but there's an American Spectator magazine, like obit of the patriarch of the DeVos family, and basically they credit him with like right-wing politics of America today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wrote the checks that made it happen. He envisioned it. I'm like, well, what does that mean really? Like, what does that mean for players, and what does that mean for Black Lives Matter, right? Like, I feel like it's a big favor to the DeVos family now to just not mention it. Like,
right.
And I feel like maybe we need to talk about it. Maybe we need to have some kind of forum where it's like people can ask those hard questions. And like, anyway, I've said enough.
When does it go from us talking about things and bringing attention to it to enacting change and actual action? Like, when we think about, of course, civil rights and Dr. King and, Jim Crow, it was only, 60 years ago. It's like no time. But here we are in 2020, talking about the same things. And does our way of protesting and talking about it and having these companies put out statements or tweets, like, does that change the actions, or will we just continue talking about things forever? Like, truthfully, I believe that America was built on, violence, and they only respect power and money. So, a lot of my thoughts are, until we're building up economic leverage and in this capitalistic society, that's the only thing we respect. It all goes back to power and money.
So I'm not going to disagree with you. I just feel like the opportunity is now. So, like, I guess I'm trying to think of a good historical example, but if right now everybody wanted this specific police reform, or or frankly, actually, okay, here's a better analogy. Let's say you have a client who's played really well and is in demand, right? You go into the meeting and you can say, hey, I want better for my client. Like, it's not the same as saying, no, he's gonna need 40 million, right? Like if you like set the expectation in the bar and just orient the negotiation around what you need, like, you're probably gonna get it, right? But so I feel like right now, like 400 years of racism, like there's an opportunity for some stuff, like real concrete things. I think the House of Representatives would pass almost anything that's popular right now, right?
Right.
Well, what's the right answer? It's just like it's a brainstorming problem in a way, right? Like, what's the, how do we make it not another example like you just rattled off? It's been this sad story of like, no, we keep having progress and then it stays about the same. Like, why do we really freaking change it?
And I had a conversation yesterday with a friend who's in a private sector business, and they were like really doing great, and COVID hit, and most of their businesses was based off of like government contracts. Mm-hmm. So now that the city changed their budget, they're like, we've got to get private business or we're in trouble. But it goes back to, who decides on the private side who they give business to.
Right.
Are they going to give it to this, Black company that they don't know much about, or, they don't hang with on the weekend? Or are they going to give it to the guy they've known in their country club, for 20 years? And essentially, people had an issue with affirmative action and different quotas and things like that. But unless people are forced to have diversity and hire or do different things, they've shown time and time again they're not going to do it on their own. So
this is Henry's point, though, is as you know, Brandon, being a professional negotiator, timing is a huge part of it. It's not just about leverage. There has to be leverage and timing. Sometimes the timing it's always there. Most of the time, there has to be the right spot. It's easier to get your client a good deal, a better deal, when the team is in flux in a good way. They just got the number one pick in the draft, and all of a sudden there is fervor, right? If things are kind of going down, it's much harder. This is the time to be that demanding. And I think it probably, to your point about just LeBron, all the stars, you tell me if I'm missing any, all the best players are in this bubble. I don't know. I can't think of the best player not in the bubble. Durant, Kyrie, I don't mean the injured guys. Of the healthy players, of the 8 teams not invited, who are we missing, right? Trae Young won't be there. He's not that star yet.
Yeah, no, he's not.
All the big names are there. In unison, they can speak with one voice. Even if guys are taking turns talking, but they're all together, they can demand some shit.
Here's my joke. This is a joke, but I'm like, well, we should start with every golf course and everything that ever had a Confederate flag on it. Like, that's our beginning offer for slavery reparations.
Right.
I saw you tweet that. Yeah.
It's easy for me to say I don't like golf, but I feel
I like golf. I don't like the flag. I don't play.
I'm happy to play at a black-owned golf course if I do golf. Like, that'd be great. It'd be fine.
Yeah, that really.
Yeah.
Good luck finding that.
Right. But there is. It'd be nice to see Adam Silver take on a leadership role as
or say anything. Guy. Anything would be a good thing to say.
Right. But as a behind the scenes whisperer to LeBron and Chris Paul and Paul George and Kawhi, say, hey, I've got your back. I need to be in the background here, but just know I'm going to give you as much air and as much support and as you could possibly need. We can make change. You guys can be the voices of that. That'd be pretty incredible to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about things in terms of police reform that could help. Do you guys think that you have any ideas in terms of a great ask from the players that would make real change?
I did. We had Carl Sudler, professor at Emory. Is he at Emory?
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta, I'm pretty sure. He's at Emory, right? He's a big, he has like police officers in his family, and his dad was like very like military guy, but he's like basically our whole family is defund the police. Like we're like, um, and he this is stuff he's been studying very carefully for a long time, and he's not saying it casually or like I did there with a laugh, like, but
and he has a PhD. Like this is a
yeah,
very learned man. Yeah, very
he's
brilliant
not
man.
saying it like a rallying cry, but he's like, no, you actually have to take that step, like to make the reform that we all want. And he could talk about what would come after. But that seems like, in a way it matters to me, like, and this is like, what do players feel right now, right? Like maybe there's something to do with like earmarks for contracts for Black-owned businesses, but I have a feeling maybe that players don't feel that right now. But maybe this defund the police thing is, they're already yelling it into megaphones in some cases anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, if you cut, there's 700,000 police officers. I believe 700,000. I'm certain there's models that we could study globally where a lot less than 700,000 could still service this nation. In addition to many other things. What are players saying to you, Brandon? I mean, when I talk to players, they always want to talk about, Coach, I just want to play. I miss playing. Like, it's easy. I always say to them, that's just the easy route. But they're in their 20s, most of them. Like, I was no different. They don't want to think about stuff. They want to get their bodies right, get back on the court, get their lives back. We all want that. They don't want to have the added burden sometimes, which is why the stars, in a sense, have to.
Yeah. I have some older players who have been around for a while who were on the player-led calls recently. And then, you have some younger guys who are mostly concerned about, taking care of their families and getting their lifetime security and, charity starting at home for them. Like they do helping their parents and their kids to come. But I think their statement is, if we're going to ask for something, we all have to be unified on it. What is the ask? And is it something that ultimately, is going to make a difference? Or are we just saying we're asking for something, as just some more signaling along with what's going on with the times? So I don't think any of the players I've talked to feel like they have the answers. And then, when you have the messenger being someone that is an easy target, it hurts.
You're talking about Kyrie and Dwight here?
Right.
So I think that's an issue amongst the players, is that, it's coming from these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to just second that, Brandon. It's not just us older guys kind of snickering at Kyrie and Dwight being the ones. The players are too. Like they may respect Kyrie's talent and Dwight's domination of the league for 6 years or 8 years, but they're now making fun of the idea that we're supposed to listen to these guys. That's what players are saying.
So this is Judy's showing the okay. During the lockout in 2010, 2011, it was an intractable dispute, and it seemed like we might lose the whole season. And so you have to wonder, if you have just all of the players, can you open an NBA or a credible NBA rival? And at that time, most of the analysis based on economics was you need stadiums, right? Now we're in a moment where stadiums are a liability, and they're actually going to play like effectively on a soundstage, which the players could achieve that. I'm going to add one more thing, which is LeBron and Maverick are major Hollywood producers and are in meetings all the time with like the people you would need to get the media deal for this to exist. Kyrie's idea that they might not need the owners was, maybe a non-starter. I don't know, but maybe it's a little more of a consideration right now than it ever has been in NBA history before. Now that stadiums, which is the owner's one linchpin of value here, it's gone. Brandon's gonna laugh at me, but go ahead.
Yeah, I challenge that notion, because we're talking about systemic racism and things like that. So for you to believe that 30 billionaire owners would allow a player-led league to overtake them, I think it's naive and a very innocent.
How does it play
train of
out though? Like, what's the just let's make a movie out of this. How does it go? Like,
That's a great idea right there. Great idea.
I mean, you look at this and you say that, like, right now the leagues are counting on TV contracts, so there's no fans, so you can't let the people choose. I mean, it comes down to huge corporations siding with this upstart of Black-led league by players and giving them the billion-dollar contracts they would need to support a league of their own.
Well,
you don't think
you've
that would
seen
happen?
the movie Tucker. Have you guys seen the movie Tucker?
No.
Jeff Bridges. It's a true story. The guy that invented the car with the seat belts and all these things, and big automobile, crushed him. And the movie is what Henry just said. We should make a movie, but it was about cars instead of basketball. But it was a great movie, actually.
Yeah.
So if the players go right now and ask for 70% of revenues for next season because the owners don't have stadiums, they don't need the owner stadiums, just making this up. And the owner's like, that's crazy. We're using the force majeure. We're not paying you. We're done. Look, the players have effectively been fired, right? So now you have two leagues. You have one with LeBron and all of the best players in the world looking for a deal, and one with stadiums. Like, if you're Disney, which one do you want to be in business with? Like,
of course, you need the talent to have a successful league. So the players run the league, but I mean, we're being the power of lobbying and money and what it can accomplish.
Yeah.
It's a rethinking, it's a reconfiguration, but it starts with a reimagination. I happen to love the idea, Henry, and that's exactly how, if we were to write this movie, that's how it would play out. The first scene would be the outrageous ask of the owners, and they say no.
Here's the other way. I'm writing this whole movie in my head. The other way that it happens is, okay, let's say we're like, one of the scenes is going to be the bubble in outside Orlando, right? And so let's think about this. So let's make up numbers. Let's say they're going to make $2 billion in revenue from this, and X amount is going to go to LeBron, X amount is going to go to Greg Popovich, whatever. But a giant chunk is going to go to Tillman Fertitta, who won't even be there, right? And if you were the CEO of, if you're some TV CEO, which Tillman Fertitta is, right? And you walk around and be like, what do you do? Like,
right.
why are you here? What's your job? How are you driving value, right? And he doesn't have a good answer. Not this year. He just doesn't, right? Like, you just don't need him. Like, he can't even pay the bills. Like, he doesn't even have the money. Like, what the hell?
And one thing I've heard players say is when you talk about safety, they're saying, well, we're taking the risk. The owners and their families won't even be here.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I think that's the right model, right? Like, I mean, David's having really hard conversations about their son going to college, right? And soon. How soon, David?
They say by July 1, they're bringing all the players in. And we're literally packing every day, ready to go.
So I think there's like this is the right mentality, right? Is like, would you want your child in that bubble, right? Like, and not that we actually want Tillman there, right? They actually don't want him there, I'm guessing, right? Like,
no one's gonna miss Tillman.
Yeah, players get to know the owners, and owners typically know how to kind of suck up to the player. I've witnessed it definitely in a creepy way, where we had to tell the owner, like, you can't talk to players that way.
Wait,
almost like they were fanboys.
What? Give us a little more on that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's. I mean, we talk about why owners buy teams, and it's certainly in the long run, I think they've always made a bunch of money on it. But there's also a part of it where we used to call them jock sniffers. They just want to be around the athletes. And I have sat with an owner at a summer league game, and all I want to do is go out at night with a player that I was training that was now on the team that he had purchased. And one of his other executives had to say, like, no, you can't just go out and hang with him at night. Although I mean, I heard Mark Cuban used to hang out with some of his Dallas players. He and Chandler Parsons. There's a right way to do it for sure. I mean, just like any owner of any business can get to other players. But this had the sense of, I want to hang out with this cool, famous NBA player, and it didn't sit well with me. So there is that degree of it. But they know how to be nice to their players. I don't trust them. In most cases, I don't trust what these owners have to say to the players. It just sounds good. But it's make believe. It's just kissing ass, basically. I don't
I'm gonna
really
be quiet so
care.
Brandon feels the obligation to talk.
You gotta do deals with these guys.
I don't think you can trust people when it's this much money on the line, and they have motivation to sway the wind one way or the other, for their benefit. And
I do think there's something else, Brandon. I want your thought about this with the players you have everywhere. Reading just what we're reading recently about how this is going to be with us for a while. I read yesterday 12 to 18 more months. Way worse in the winter is what they're expecting. They've been expecting this. We do have to figure out life within this new world, right? And so this becomes a practice plan in a sense. Disney does for the future. Like they're wearing. I read. Tell me if I'm wrong, guys, because I didn't read it that closely. Everyone behind the bench has to wear a mask, right? Second row has to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that the statistician doesn't have to wear a mask. I knew the PA announcer wouldn't because I guess they feel it would affect his voice, but everyone else on that scores table does. That is a process I think we're going to get used to seeing if indeed we're going to be hosting games anytime in 2021 at other arenas, whether fans are there or not. This is a practice way of doing it. And there's going to be risk. It seems like we're all going to be living with some risk here unless they come up with a medical therapy or a virus for a long time.
I mean, our government has decided whoever gets it, gets it. And, may the strong survive. So
we shouldn't be that callous.
But that's what they've decided.
Right.
I'm saying, so at what point, how do we reel it back in and, take these precautions when you've told everybody go live your life and we're going to get back to normal? I think sports really are going to be affected because you can't have, I saw plans talking about seats in between. Ultimately, if you have thousands of people in an arena with the same air circulating, I mean, everybody's going to get it.
Yeah, this mask thing, right? I mean, the cool thing is you can look at places where they've really limited the spread and what do they do? And it's, it's definitely masks for starters, right? And this is where it really is weird to me that powerful people are going to a lot of trouble to not be seen in public in their masks, right? It would be, look, I mean, they obviously they bargained for this, right? The fact that everybody on the bench isn't going to wear a mask is something that someone had to bargain for, right? Do you want it? Is that a win in negotiations that you don't have to wear a mask? I feel like you might want to bargain the other way, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's from Michelle Roberts' comments, it does seem like the PA's been pretty focused on, freedom of movement and not getting the painful nasal swab, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But I'm like, I don't, if the PA, and that's fine, I get that. I'm sure that's an accurate representation of her constituency's views. But part of me is like, if they're not going to fight for science, who is? The billionaires aren't going to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just think, you got guys who are used to luxuries of life and lifestyle in the NBA, and she understands and she's hearing from her constituents and they're telling her what's important. So she works for them.
Do people believe in Chris Paul? I ask for this reason, which is that he has the most money at stake if they lose this season and next season, right?
I think that a lot of the players, I've talked to know that Chris Paul and LeBron and those guys kind of put themselves first. And that would be some of the question is, are you looking out for the rank and file players just as much as you for yourself?
Who's got the best, like, who's got the most meaningful voice on that Zoom call, right? Like, who's the, and we made fun of Kyrie a little bit. Chris Paul and LeBron maybe have this compromise thing, but who's the voice that really matters?
Well, I think the voice that was making the most sense and that people felt like really, you know, had critical thoughts that they could respect was Garrett Temple. But does he have the sway to, you know, unify people and get them in the direction they need to go as a group? I don't know if he has that pull.
I tell you, Damian, Henry, your point about the mask on the bench, how they're arguing for the wrong side. Damian said, "Hey, we're wearing masks on the bench. We'll take it off just like we do our warm up when we're we'll have a manager. Each one of us have our own little Tupperware thing to put the mask in. When we go in game, we come out, we put it back on. We're wearing masks on the bench. Every coach should wear a mask except for the head coach. Again, there's risk in everything, but you are limiting risk the more people are doing those kinds of things. He could get that done."
Yeah, I was thinking it would be cool to wear masks, you know, even though you're not required to. That would be
right. They could just make it their own thing.
Just normalizing it for more people.
Yeah.
I think of every kid. I mean, Henry's made this point. Once they start playing basketball, everyone's playing basketball who normally plays, of the young people anyway. And if they were doing it at least off the court wearing a mask, it would have a big impact. In my opinion, a very big impact. And the players could decide that amongst
themselves. It's
themselves.
our one remaining fashion show too, right? Like, we're not going to have the walk from the bus. We're not going to have, but you could have your designer mask that you could be selling.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great point.
They're already starting to do that. The college teams are starting to produce masks. I could see, I don't know how they're going to play football, but that is one sport that I'm convinced is going to be playing. They don't seem to care about any of this stuff. And I could see them wearing masks underneath their face masks because you won't see it anyway. But there's nothing wrong with it. And it's a part of normal that we should embrace now.
If you talk to any college coach in America, they're like, "Oh, football has to play. If football doesn't play, it's over for the rest of us."
Right.
Like, you know, football programs are funding these universities.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, there's no question. And dealing with smaller schools the way I do to try to help someone like some athletes that are high school age wanting to go to Division II, Division III, NAIA. The first question I have to ask when I speak to the head coaches, do you think they'll be around by the fall? Mm-hmm. Because their sports are cut and their dorms are cut. And these universities are on a shoestring budget right now. In fact, one already had to let their coach go, my buddy. He was making too much money, and they had to hire just some young kid. And I can't send a player to go play for some young kid. Doesn't know what he's doing. We found a better place for him. But yeah, there's a lot of schools in trouble without sports.
Brandon, is there some way this ends up being a good thing? Is there some way that, like, we reshuffle the deck in some way that 5 years from now we're pleased with how it all went?
In terms of, like, our society?
Well, we're taking a beating in 2020. You know what I mean? like in basketball and society, but maybe it leads to some changes. And maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
I think there will be changes. Yeah, but to me, until we look at systems, I mean, when you're talking about defunding police, when you're talking about jail reform, to me, when you're talking about, you know, the Fortune 500 companies, you know, I saw a video on the internet where it was like, if we were all playing Monopoly, but Black people were in jail on the Monopoly board for the first 400 years, while everybody else went around and collected all the assets and real estate. And then it's like, okay, you can start playing.
And then they burn the board every 50 years. That's 50 more rounds.
Yeah.
Like, how do you ever buy houses? They still couldn't buy houses.
Yeah.
And, you know, to hear friends who just in 2020, like, they're learning about redlining. You know, I saw you guys asking, had you ever heard about Black Wall Street and the Tulsa massacre before?
Yeah.
You know, people will argue
David asked
that.
that, and then Arnie Duncan, the education secretary, followed him like a week later. I was like, oh, David Thorpe was thinking about this a long time ago.
It's astounding. It is. It's sadly, it's astounding that how history has decided what to report and not address something so incredibly important as that. But not the first time.
We should have Gerard join us, I guess. And we do have a lot of questions. Well, we have a lot of discussion. What are the questions here?
One for Brandon that he may not want to answer. Do you see it, Brandon? From Devin. Random question for Brandon. Do you see it?
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Yeah, I don't, ultimately in this industry, the news comes from both sides. So, when you're wondering how things are being broken, they're getting it from teams and they're also getting it from agents. So.
Right. Basically, the general question is how often are people like Woj and I forget who else they mentioned, are Schefter are talking to agents? The answer is all the fucking time. They're trying to break news all the time. What I've always said is the people who control the information control the information. They'll release it when it's to their benefit to release it. In most cases, Henry has a much different view of all of this that I think is the future of how journalism should be, and maybe once was. I'm not a journalist, really.
Don't get me started on that, David. I'm never going to stop talking.
But how Henry does it is a smart way to do it.
Gerard, how are you?
Hey guys. Brandon, what's up, man?
What's going on, Gerard? How you doing?
Good. We're thinking more and more about this stuff, and we can all say this is a moment, right? Where it's an opportunity for real change. And I'm not one who likes to think that sports is this, avenue that can like dictate everything else, because I don't buy that. But I will say this. The class of people who we're not hearing from again, and it's time for my daily rant on the capitalist machine, right? Is the billionaires and the oligarchs, right? Like, we're not hearing anything from them, and I'm wondering, like, are they just sitting back like, please, just everybody, let's just start these sports back up. Everybody start playing again, so you're all distracted and worried about your fantasy in this game and that game, and all right, all this protest stuff goes away because now we're back to doing what we're doing, which is taking all your money, creating laws and policies that like limit you continuously, right? Like, that's the cycle of the game that's going. And I wonder, like, to Henry's point earlier, do NBA guys think about the world in that way? Or are they just like, nah, man, I got my cash, I'm good, like, my family's good. Like, in many ways, like how we are, right? I have a job, I'm taking care of my wife, my whoever, my kids, and we're siloed and nobody's thinking about the greater good.
From my perspective, I think that as guys mature in their lives, they definitely start to think about things in this perspective, and they start chasing a purpose-driven life more, because their whole life they were chasing this dream of making it to the NBA. And then you think that it's going to be this utopia once you get there, and like everything you've been chasing for your whole life will make your life great. And, you see guys struggling with depression, things like that, because now they're looking for a purpose to impact and change lives. And I think that nowadays you see more and more athletes thinking about how they can affect, lives in communities where they from, or as a whole. But it takes time for most to get there. You're rare to see kids as young as Jaylen Brown thinking on the level he is and being so socially in tune with the bigger picture.
Well, it's
He's
like
the same guy who was running those laps with his like grandfather clocking him early. I'm like, Jaylen Brown won the lockout. I mean, he's just on the lockdown. He just did.
Well, it's something interesting you said, Brandon. Like, right? It's sort of like for all of us, right? When you have dreams and wishes or whatever, and they come true, the reality of it is like, okay, well, now you've gotten what you wished for. Like, right? Like, okay, it happens now. Like, how do you then, because of course, whatever it was in here is never what it manifests to be, right? The money and all that's fine, but it's that other stuff that you're like, this is not, I didn't sign up for this. This doesn't make me feel better. This is not, I don't feel great. right? Like, and so how do I combat that?
It's Gerard's a little bit to me like Bush after 9/11. Like in that moment, he could have whatever he wanted. And ended up getting a bunch of dumb stuff. Like war in Afghanistan and just like in some Halliburton deals, whatever. Like it was just kind of like he could have done whatever his real dream was. That was the chance to pull the resources together and the goodwill and whatever. I feel like this isn't quite that, but it's kind of like that, where it's like, hey, this is a moment where if you have a plan, what you want, like it's go time.
I really think that, and I know we talked about it, and part of it is it's like anywhere else. The 450 players all agreeing, but this idea of that it's a line from Game of Thrones, which I'm sure some of you watched, right? And it's this idea that the ruling class, while they are the ruling class, are the few, right? Like everybody else is the many, right? And like when the many stop fearing when the many stop fearing the few, that's when good things happen for everybody. And I wonder, like, can they all just sit down and be like, wait a minute, if there's no us, who cares if they got arenas? There's gonna be fine, have your concerts or whatever you want to have there, but no us, no basketball. And to your point, Henry, Disney and ESPN are going to be like, no, we want to be with LeBron and those dudes, because that's where it's at. Like we're going with them.
It would be a hot mess, I'm sure, but like over time, this has been LeBron's model, right? Is like he run everything himself with his friends from AAU on, right? And it didn't work great day one, but they're good at it now.
Everything takes time, and just to further the Game of Thrones metaphor, Gerard, you're right. It would be the many over the few, and the many have dragons. You can't beat that. They have the larger crew, and they've got dragons.
Oh, it's my worst nightmare to
well done.
host a Game of Thrones podcast.
They have a big advantage for sure. We're all for it. We need someone just to rally it up. LeBron could. He just has so much on his plate, and that goes to the point that both Gerard and Brandon were just making. The anxiety of the players, and this is something Brandon and I fortunately have had to deal with. The moment players get drafted is a very special moment. The adults know they don't understand the roller coaster ride they're about to go on. Like Lamar Odom once talked about this when he lost one of his children to SIDS, and relatives wanted to borrow money while they were mourning the death of his son. And I think they asked for 10 grand. He walked into his room, he pulled out 10 grand of his safe, and he threw it in the fire. Like I have so many stories, personal stories, of how the player has to support everybody. I've been involved in negotiations with agents and players where the player wanted deferred salary because he figured my family will never realize that when I'm done, I'm still going to get paid. And I can just have that money for my own personal family. And not to mention just the roller coaster of the league. It's freaking hard. And every year they keep drafting 60 new guys that want to take your job and all the other stuff. So there's a lot to it. And these superstars carry so much on their backs. But the moment is, there's no question, there's never been a moment like this. We all see it. We all feel it every day. And being it, one of the issues, Henry, is to imagine what it'd be like without all these arenas. Well, we got it. They're doing it in Spain in one place. They're doing Germany in one place. They're doing it in America in one place. Like, hey, and by the way, there's also going to be lots of idle time. That's also a key component. No more travel. You finish the game, shower up, talk to the press, go watch the next game and talk about this. The players are allowed to watch these games. That'll be cool, by the way. You're going to have players watching each other's games. That'll be neat. Let's see what they talk about.
I mean, I know the Big Three had came up with the idea to have like content around the players all in one place. I mean, catching the behind the scenes things that are going to be going on inside this bubble. I mean, even when families are introduced, like it's going to be so many layers to it that I don't think, the regular fan could even fathom. It's just, it's very interesting to me, like the times we're in, and when we look back and think about them finishing this 2020 season in the bubble.
Brandon, do you think are there commercial opportunities from the bubble? Like, can you do endorsements and stuff from there? Like, is it
Of
viable?
course. I mean, especially if it's the fact that this is going to be like an all eyes on the NBA thing. Now, the NBA is controlling the bubble, so I'm sure they'll try to control access and
Right.
what endorsements really have value because, they control the TV partners and things like that, where they'll want to increase the value of their sponsors and
So we all
getting
State
those
Farm.
odds.
It's all State Farm. IKEA.
But if your client gets a deal for like a watch brand or whatever, they can't send a photographer to take a picture of him wearing that watch, right? Like, can he actually make good on his watch deal?
I mean, that's the beauty of players controlling their platforms via social media.
Right.
All the players are going live on Instagram, they're posting video, things like that. So,
yeah.
But of course, you will want even, bigger platform of them showing the player with that watch on, or just like how Beats by Dre had the Olympic platform with all the players wearing it when they're at the games, even when they're not playing. If they're at the games watching LeBron play,
they're going to
the
be.
eyes are going to see it.
They're going to be there. There's not much else to do, and it's fucking. I love my state, and I like to sweat, but I'm weird. I've lived here my whole life. It's fucking hot, and it's only getting hotter. These guys are staying indoors.
To me, I think we just brainstormed a great idea that the union should take on their own. Is if the players are going to go watch these other games, they should be negotiating deals with big brands and having them all in unison wear or have these things on when they go to the game.
Okay, now his other question is, the NBA has a rule against kneeling during the anthem. Do we test that now?
Yes, you address
it. They won't say anything about that right now.
What does that mean?
That they won't say anything about that? That they would be scared. They would be scared to be on the wrong side of that one right
now. But is it the right fight? I mean, is that like is that gonna happen? Like, is that the rule to go after right now? Like, actually, bigger question: is it televised? It's usually not, right?
Yeah, they stopped that.
Yeah.
Or just stay in the locker room until it's over. If they can avoid it that way too.
Or if you're one of the brands, Nike or Under Armour or whomever, I'm sure the people at White and Kennedy and Nike have already got stuff cooked up when this starts, right? Like, there's got to be something. If I always say, don't talk about it, be about it. They're going to be about it. This is the time to do it, right? Like, you have something, of course, with the swoosh somewhere where you're making a statement and you're doing it, right? Like, why not? Because if you do allow them, or you have a thing that's protesting a shirt or any kind of paraphernalia, and Adam or anybody or one of the owners comes out and says something negatively or comes out against it, that's bad PR for them. Totally, they're not going to be on that, even though some of them may hate it. I don't know.
I think you want every single player to kneel every single anthem.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want
the stands too.
No anthems. Why are we even playing the national anthem?
I agree.
It is weird. Yeah.
Henry, let's make sure we ship a bunch of True Hoop hats to those Disney resorts.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to wear something. They need to wear a hat on after they play. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we use it all the time.
Like Tillman Gerard.
All right, Brandon. Any last words before we? Have we embarrassed you sufficiently already?
No, I'm good. I've enjoyed myself like always, and hopefully I didn't stop myself from being invited back this time.
Oh, you're good.
Oh no, you're always welcome for sure.
Your family,
for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, David. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everybody.